Hello and welcome to our program Where God Weeps, a program where we speak about the situation of the suffering and persecuted church around the world. Today our guest is an old friend of our program. He has been with us in previous occasions. Father Michael Shields has been working in Magadan, Far East Siberia, since the early 90s. The Church of the Nativity in Magadan, in the Russian Far East, serves Roman Catholics, many of whom survived Stalin's forced labor camps. Today, the church stands both as a monument to the millions who died or suffered in the camps and as a source of inspiration for the local population. To know more about the situation of this small Catholic community in Siberia, it is a great joy to welcome Father Michael Shields. Father, welcome to our program.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Father, you are a veteran of our program Where God Weeps. You've been with us several times, and we have seen you also in a very interesting documentary that CRTM produced about Magadan, the area where you live. So, as an introduction for our audience and our listeners, we're going to show a little segment where we can see a little bit of the work that you're doing, particularly with families in Magadan, Russia. So here is a segment of the documentary Magadan, the Devil's Playground.
Magadan, a harbour town with a population of 150,000, lies on the Sea of Okhotsk in the far east of Siberia, some 2,000 kilometers from the nearest city. Magadan was the administrative center of Stalin's Kolyma Arctic death camps, the gulags, a vast system of work camps and prisons in Siberia through which millions were imprisoned and perished from exposure, starvation, and execution between 1932 and 1954.
We know that were many, many unmarked graves, and they actually call Magadan one large grave site. And the prisoners themselves can witness to thousands dying and hundreds of people, hundreds of bodies being bulldozed over in different times of the year in a mass grave.
When gold and other precious metals were discovered in the Kolyma region in the early 20th century, a wealth to feed the USSR's hungry industrial expansion, Stalin's Dalstroy project, a government agency formed to mine the reserves, initially drew upon criminals as a workforce. But prisoners soon included perceived enemies of the state, intellectuals, political opponents, and finally Christians. To the socialist mind, it was an ideal scenario. Enemies of the state were put to productive use in crucial industrial developments with the highest possible return on investment, while being kept from poisoning the socialist ideal. The conditions were brutal, and in the end prisoners, men and women, were forced to work 12 hours a day and food was rationed. The combination of exhaustion, hunger, and extreme climate reduced the average life expectancy to 6 months.
Stalin sent many Catholics to Far East Siberia into the prison camps. And these repressed then are the people that were in the prison camps. They were exiled after being freed after their sentences, and because of exile, then they stayed and married and had families. And so the repressed are the people that I encountered in Magadan that have suffered in the prison camps. They always regretted there was no place really for them to pray and to remember their dead. They'd had monuments in Magadan called the Mask of Sorrows, but it's more or less a gigantic Russian mask, not overly received by the repressed, although they go there sometimes. But there was no place to pray. And so when we built the church, we built specifically a chapel, what I call Chapel of the Martyrs, for those who died in the prison camps. All the repressed brought crosses, and for their families and for their friends, we placed it on a wall to just to remind us where we are and who we're praying for and who we're praying with. I don't have a person in the parish that didn't have somebody sent to the gulags, somebody that suffered in the gulags. So a gospel of fear that was planted in the people's heart is to this day. People still have a deep fear. So the impact is great, and the destruction of lives and families, and with that, the depression, the alcoholism, broken families, divorce rates. Divorces are 80% in Russia. People losing their soul. The communists destroyed many people and nearly destroyed the church. But when faith is rediscovered or discovered even for the first time in Russia, people grow very fast.
I looked for it in sex and alcohol. Wherever I looked, I found nothing. Until, that is, I came to church, which is when I realized that I needed God, and I needed the church. I mean that communion that I cannot attain in this world, in which nothing, which only gave me emptiness, where I truly achieved a spiritual peace and stability, where I finally found my family.
The church gave me one more chance at life on this earth. I should have died before coming here.
I believe in one true, living God who helps me every day, and who I see in the real world in answers to my prayers, who guides me through various times of trial, and who, I'm certain, guides me through those trials in order that I might be ever closer to Him. He rejoices that I protect His creation. He rejoices that we worship.
We had a retreat. On this retreat, there's a time in which you name the children and you light candles. And you light these candles for each child that was aborted. And there was 5 women. And I counted at the end of this service 47 candles for these 5 women. And it's not at all unusual to have 10 or more abortions.
I had 3 children. Now we are 5, with the birth of 2 twin girls. I live with my fiancé. I recently found out that I was pregnant. When I found out that I was expecting twins, my mother-in-law didn't want me to have them, for financial reasons. Of course, it was all to do with finances. I was sort of happy, though my next thought was that when my fiancé hears about it, he will most probably send me away to have an abortion. Because we already had 3 children, how could we have even more, seeing we weren't yet standing firmly on our own 2 feet? I went to hospital and immediately saw on the door that this was the place mothers seeking help could come to. Exactly. A kind of support site. I can't remember exactly what was written there, I went inside and they explained how they could sort of help me.
Помочь мне, как бы.
This is where we met Father Michael, who has been helping us. And look, my twins are almost 2 months old.
Russia has economic problems. That may be one of the main issues that drives young women to have abortions. But oftentimes I find as well terrible influences from husbands, boyfriends, grandmothers, that a child is a bother, that a child is a barrier to something. Conservatively, they say for every 10 births, there's 13 abortions. It's anywhere from 70 to 75% of pregnancies end up in abortions. I know that to be a fact in the terms of not only an abortion, but repeated abortions. What I love is I get to go to what's called the birthing hospital, and I've walked with this young woman, and who's now around me? The grandmother who wanted to have an abortion, the boyfriend who wanted to have the abortion, the husband who wanted to have the abortion, and all are delighted with this new birth. And I thought, what a tragedy, huh? If she would have had an abortion, because now they have this treasure. And this happens every single time.
Father, what do you consider were the main challenges that you faced in the families of the area?
I think the main challenge would be anywhere. Probably giving the family hope and healing, I think, is what I would describe my time in Magadan as being for 25 years. The family is the key of society, isn't it? It's the cell of society. If society is healthy, the family is healthy. If the family is unhealthy, society is unhealthy. So I think my sense is that what you do, you look for peace between husbands and wives, so there's no divorce. You look for peace between children and parents, so there's no division. So what you're doing is always seeking reconciliation of the family.
Father, but when you talk about reconciliation, I think one of the main challenges is the pain. It's the suffering that people had and resentment. So how do you provoke or promote reconciliation when the soul is hurt?
Yeah, it's the healing, I think, and I think it's what Christianity can provide. The gospel says that what Christianity is a religion of forgiveness. First of all, we seek forgiveness for ourselves through the cross of Jesus Christ. And we have that forgiveness, then we have to extend it to others. I interviewed some prison camp survivors, and I asked that question, why are you not bitter? Your life was taken away. You were in the prison camp for 10 years. You lost your hopes, your dreams, everything. And they said to me, if we didn't forgive, we would die. I think I would say the same for anyone. No matter how bitter, how angry, how disappointed, what a life has been destroyed, it will only be more destroyed unless you seek forgiveness. So I preach to wounded people that the wound is real, but the way to heal the wound is through forgiveness. And there is no better way to find freedom because you're imprisoned in your unforgiveness.
One of the main threats that you mentioned before in the area is abortion.
Yeah.
Father, it has a very high rate.
Yeah.
When we talk about reconciliation and forgiveness, we have to talk about also ourselves,
Yeah.
particularly these women, these mothers
Yeah.
that went through such a trauma and tragic moment in their lives. How do you work this with them?
Well, first of all, you can't come with a judgment, can you? Because it's a different culture, different time. And so when I came to Russia, I felt there was kind of this cloud over people, especially over women. I said, what is this? And it was abortion. Because in Russia it was not just one, but multiple abortions. And so I couldn't preach against abortion if I could not provide a way out for them for healing. So I brought Rachel's Vineyard, which is a healing retreat for women. Now, do you understand that wound? That is so deep, and so many ways it is impossible to fully heal. But what you can do is you can allow a person to come out of the guilt, come out of the shame, be able to speak what happened in their life, and become then advertisement, spiritual advertisement for the next generation. And that was my hope. And we've now had Rachel's Vineyard for the last 15 years, women in my parish, Protestant women, non-believing women, trying to find a way out of this terrible, terrible shame and guilt. And I've seen healing. I've seen healing in these women. And then I see them speaking to the next generation that this is not the answer. A child is not a problem. A child is not a disease. A child is a gift. It's going to be difficult, but there's ways to embrace and ways to hold on to this child. And that's another thing the church has to do. They have to provide a way, and we try and do that as well. Well, I think you hit it. And it was a culture not against life. It was a culture of economic struggle. I think in the West you can almost say there's a culture against life. I didn't feel that in Russia. I felt an oppression. I felt an economic oppression. I felt a sense of hopelessness, that they had no other choice. That Russians live in a very small apartments. How can you have many children? Economically, how can you support your child? So what do? If you're not economically backing these women, then your words are empty. So we said, I preached from the pulpit, I will support you 3 years. If you need help, I can't rent you an apartment, but I can feed you, I can get medicine for your child, I can find clothes for your child, and I can give you spiritual support. You come to me anytime you need help, and I will sit down with you and I'll help you. So my position was, unless you are backing the mother and giving her some kind of support, then your words are empty.
How do you do it, Father?
By begging. I just beg. I had no money when I said that from the pulpit. I have organizations, the Church in Need have helped me. I have a problem. I have people in America that have supported me, because once you begin a pro-life work, people sense it's real. This is saving children. I can count 65 children that I have saved from abortion in my parish.
Father, we were talking about a crisis of the family in Western societies. Mm-hmm. What goes first, Father? Is the family in crisis because society is in crisis, or vice versa?
It's a difficult question. I know for a fact the society and what it places upon the family destroys the family if it's negative. The family is being attacked from all sides. The cultural time in the West is anti-family. It's anti-marriage. It's anti-child. So how can you have a family when that kind of pressure? So maybe I would say that it's both, but the way to counter the culture is to make sure you heal the family. Make sure the family has a foundation to stand against the pressure of culture. And I think that's where we see the church, that's where we see parishes, that's where we see organizations. We should be completely committed to the family. Every parish should say that is our primary role, healing the family, helping the family, supporting the family. If we're not doing that, then parishes will dissolve into nothing. So I would venture to say that society has a larger role in the pressure of the family, but the family is falling apart, then you lose any hope for anything.
And that is the case with divorce, when the family is lost. With the rates that we have nowadays, Father, of 50% in the United States, higher in Europe, and Russia.
It's 80% in Russia.
It's even I think is one of the highest in the world. So what is the hope for family? How do you respond to this?
First of all, I don't answer all of the world's problems. I answer the young man or young woman who's standing right before me and struggling. My position always is, let's heal the family. Let's heal the marriage. The gospel says to me there's always hope. The gospel says to me there's always a way out of anything. That the God is a God of the possibility, of possibilities. So I don't. If indeed there is no healing, then and is no reconciliation. I have watched families, I've watched marriages dissolve, but I will fight to the very end to hold a marriage together, because I think Christ can do that.
How do you give them Christ, Father?
You pray with them. You tell them you're not going to heal your life apart from Christ. You're not going to have hope apart from Christ. He came to give hope. He came to give healing. If you're not preaching Jesus Christ, if you're not sharing that gospel message with I don't care how much good advice you can give a person. He's the divine physician. He's going to work on that. And I've seen husbands turn around that you would never even imagine be able to reconcile with the wife. Because what they did, they'd encountered their own sin, they encountered their own brokenness, they encountered their own need for forgiveness. When you do that, then you can extend that forgiveness to your wife, you extend that forgiveness to your children. And that's not all the time, that's an exceptional time, but I've seen it, so I know it works. Think about it as a society that was anti-God, anti-church. And now, in the mornings, I put the Blessed Sacrament in front of me. It's a former prison camp with Stalin, and I'm praying before the sacrament, and here Jesus is victorious, and that one of the darkest places in all the earth, the prison camp city, and Jesus is there. And so I have to be hopeful.
Father, what can we learn from other cultures, even from other religions, in terms of how to protect and how to develop family?
I think that one of the things that I would say is not to be afraid to have children. I think there's an ultimate fear in the West that is going to limit your life. Every family that I know that has many children, and this family is alive. These children are beautiful. Why be afraid to have children? And I think we have to break that fear in our culture that it's going to limit your life. It gives you greater freedom, greater ability to be alive, I think, as an individual. That's first. So have more children. Don't be afraid of having children. Secondly, I think we have to build up men. I think one of the things in our culture is we have demasculized our culture. I think we need strong men to stand as fathers and husbands and not be afraid to stand up in a culture as a man who loves his wife and protects his wife, and a man who loves his children and protects his children. I see that in other cultures, and I think the Western culture has lost its manliness. I think that's a strong, one day after Mass, I invited all the men and the young boys to pray before the statue of St. Joseph. And we started a St. Joseph group. There they were praying for their family. The women were watching this at a distance. This is the first time they saw their husbands praying for them, their children, their young men praying for them. It was such a powerful event. Oftentimes, I become a father to people, not just a spiritual father, but an advisor, because nobody had fathers. So I know what it looks like not to have a father. But the answer is not to throw out the father. The answer is to build a true father that we have in the image in the Father in heaven, the father who's compassionate, who's strong, who's a visionary, who lifts up, who encourages and loves and shares mercy and forgives. That's the father that should be in the home.
Father, if you could give a prescription of vitamins for the family, what would it include?
You know, I see a family, I'm thinking of 4 or 5 families that I know, strong Catholic families, and they do pray together. Husband and wives pray together. They pray with their children. They share their faith. They attend church together. That's their priority. They make their faith known to their children. They share what's important with their children. So my vitamin is prayer, deep communication of your faith with your child, going to church on Sunday, worshiping the Lord, one of the main commandments, and always, always, always looking for forgiveness as the binding force of how you love.
Father, and if the parents that are watching our program, if they say, well, I know that I want my child to have my faith and I want to share, but I don't know how, and
Yeah.
I feel some kind of rejection from the younger generations.
Yeah.
How do we solve this dilemma?
Don't give up. Why would we give up? So it's not successful. So my son is not going to church. So my daughter is not going to church. What? So what? Don't give up. Keep praying for them. Keep asking them. Keep inviting them. If this is important to you, why would you give it up? Why would you not talk about it? If church is important for you, your children are not going to church, and you decide not to talk about it, the children are going to just say, well, this apparently it's not important for my parents. So it's not nagging them, but it's sharing what's most valuable in your life, always most valuable in your life. The gospel is always calling us something new and a new relationship, and I've seen lives change overnight. I've seen what happens when the Lord touches a heart, where the Holy Spirit moves in somebody's heart, where a person gets the cross into them, and they see what the cross of Christ means, the hope that that can bring. I've seen conversions that shouldn't have happened, that happened. So I can't give up. I can't give up on anyone, no matter how far they are, no matter how far they've fallen, no matter what their life is, or no matter what their lifestyle is. I can't give up, because Christ never gave up on me.
Finally, Father, because we're running out of time, unfortunately, but you've been in Magadan for 25, 30 years?
25 years now.
25 years. What do you foresee in the next 25 years for your
First of all, I won't
pastoral
be there
work?
another 25 years, I'm pretty sure. I have maybe, if the Lord allows me, another 10 to 15. And I will be there. I will die in Magadan. That's the place the Lord wants me to. I pray that I will be there for my death, till my death. I see doing the same thing I'm doing right now, healing the family. Not huge successes, not cultural shifts, not mega churches. I can 10 people, 20 people, but if those 10 or 20 people become gospel carriers, they carry a gospel in their heart and their family, then there's going to be another 10 or 20 people from their life, they're going to be affected. And the next generation will already have a rebirth of faith.
Well, Father, I think that this is the perfect ending for our conversation with this deep sense of hope.
Thank you.
Thank you, Father. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us in another program of Where God Weeps. If you want to know more about the work of the church in Magadan and in other places where the church is suffering and working for the family, we encourage you to contact the information at the end of this program. Thank you, and God bless.